This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. On the show today, you'll find out where book publishing is going and how to take advantage of it. How to identify and avoid publishing predators. What opportunities are emerging as the book trade evolves in new forms. How to avoid losing money, and much, much more. Join us now as a variety of publishing pros will deliver insights and strategies to take the author to the next level of publishing. It's your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. Brought to you by AuthorU and the Book Shepherd. And now, here's your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
Well, I'm going to give a drum roll for myself today because guess what? I finished my 35th book, and it's into editing right now, and the title is How to Avoid 101 Book Publishing Blunders, Bloopers, and Boo-Boos. One of the big boo-boos, which is going to be the subject of what we're going to be diving into during this session today, is that authors don't get that publishing is a business. And with me, and Helen has been on before on the show, with me is Helen Sedwick. She is a fabulous attorney, knows publishing inside and out, and she's the author of the Self-Publisher's Legal Handbook, as well as another book called Coyote Wins. So she gets publishing, she understands the author, but she also comes from the intellectual property standpoint. And she's created with my pal Joel Friedlander a great toolkit, which we'll talk about too, on really this whole business strategy of what authors need to do. So I'm just going to jump right in and welcome Helen to the show. Hi, Helen. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. Little coffee today, so I hope our listeners will forgive me. I'm a little graspy in my voice, but that I'm always amazed with authors, as an author myself, that they get so many times, and a lot of times it's really even more with the fiction side. They get so caught up with the art of writing, and they forget that this is really a business, and that the product of the writing is a product, and a product needs to be promoted and sold, and somehow they think that the gods will come to them and do it all by itself. And I'm always amazed with that philosophy.
Yes, we do. I think that's what inspires us at the hard times of writing, is that the angels are going to find our work and take it from there. Unfortunately, that's not the reality.
Oh no, it's the truthiness of it is that this business of authoring and publishing is hard work, and the writing is actually the easiest part. And I know that it's so hard for so many authors to get, because especially when they have to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. So let's really kind of look at that. What are some of the components you see? And I also want to jump into, what kind of forms of the business should they create? Is it if you want to jump into it, is it an S corporation, a C corporation? Do they do an LLC? Do they just operate under their own name? I mean, I have some of my own opinions, but let's kind of flow with that.
Sure. I'm going to back up for a second, because what happens with a lot of authors, especially if they're going the self-publishing route, or they might be editing or freelancing, is that they're somewhat surprised that they're now starting a small business, and usually they're somewhat intimidated by it, and they tend to procrastinate on dealing with the nuts and bolts part of the business until it's a mess. So what I did with Joel is we worked together to create a toolkit for setting up your business, with the goal of making it easier for writers to take care of this task, these set of tasks, and then put the business in a box on the side so it kind of takes care of itself, with the goal, as I said, with the overall goal of saving writers both time and money. So here's an author who's about to self-publish. She's about to release her book, and she realizes now she's starting a business. One of the first questions that people ask is, should I be incorporating or forming a limited liability company called an LLC by a lot of people? Because they're going to go to cocktail parties and hear, oh, you have to set it up as a corporation to protect your assets. I actually disagree. I think for most writers starting out, there's no need to form an entity, a corporation or an LLC. It's not a mistake. It's just an added expense and an added complication that really doesn't do writers very much good, because the risks of writing are claims of infringement or defamation. Those are not the acts of a corporation. They're the acts of the writer. So if a writer sets up a corporation, both the writer and the corporation will get sued. If a writer is really concerned about potential liability, they're better off spending the money on buying business liability or media perils insurance. You get much more for the same amount of money. So if they're not a corporation or an entity, what a writer is a sole proprietorship. Many millions of companies in this country are sole proprietorships. You form it simply by going into business.
And do you need to for someone who's doing a sole proprietorship, do they need to declare anything with their respective states they live in?
Yes, your state and the federal government still going to want to know you're in business. So there are a few filings that you have to do. The first one's called a Federal Employer Identification Number, and that's basically a Social Security number for your business. You get it online from the IRS. People, make sure you go directly to the IRS site. There are a lot of sham sites out there that will pop up, and they look like the IRS sites, and they ask for all your private information, like your mother's maiden name and your Social Security number, and they charge you money. If you go to the IRS site, which is irs.gov, it's free. It takes about 10 minutes. So once your business has an EIN, then when you're doing business transactions, you can Create Space or Ingram Spark or Smashwords the EIN for your business instead of your personal Social Security number. And then on the state level, people need, if they're going to be actually selling books themselves through their website or at book fairs, et cetera, they're going to have to register for what's called a seller's certificate, sometimes called a resale certificate. And that way you have to collect and pay over sales tax. But the flip side is you can buy then copies of your book for resale without paying sales tax. So yes, taxes is one of those things you can't avoid.
Yeah, it's part of life.
It is.
And you are in business. Yes, yeah. Exactly. So what you're saying is, don't worry about this. The formal corporations. Go as a sole proprietorship, and get started that way. And so what's the transition point where they decide that I won't be a sole proprietor anymore, and you go into something else?
If your net income from writing is over $50,000 a year, some accountants may say $100,000 a year, then it's worth forming an LLC or a corporation because there are some tax benefits. I don't want to go into it now because it's kind of complex and each accountant's going to do it differently. But if you're starting to get into that level of net income from your writing, you have one of the problems of success, which is something I hope every listener has, which is it's time to go to the next stage and get a professional in to make sure that you're running your business properly.
Yeah, and that does make sense. Well, Helen, so many times authors, I'm always amazed that they think that everyone's going to steal their stuff. And, is there piracy? Yeah, there is piracy out there. But that my experience is when an author is so far along in their writing process that for someone to take and grab an idea and get it out and published is going to be pretty difficult. I mean, do you have any thoughts about that?
I know authors worry about that. They're worried about they're going to be stealing the idea, but anybody who's actually gone from the idea to the full completed manuscript, knows how much work it is.
Oh, it's huge.
And what the law protects is the execution, the manuscript, not the idea. So, I understand that authors are worried about the idea, losing the idea. That's not the author's biggest risks. For me, the author's biggest risk is that they're going to lose their work by signing a bad contract. It's not someone's going to steal it from them. They're going to sign a contract, and they're going to hand it over to somebody without really taking the time or getting the help they need to understand the contract they're signing. Lawyers call it theft by contract. That is a much bigger risk, and something for authors to take seriously before they sign a contract and to understand what they're signing. Writers tend to think, this publisher wants to publish me. I shouldn't ask any questions. I shouldn't be difficult. And they should have a different orientation on that. In business, you're actually respected more if you've done your homework and you negotiate and you know what's negotiable and what's not. It's not considered rude in business to negotiate, as long as you kind of take the time to know what you should be negotiating over. And resources are available on the Internet and through books to help authors negotiate these contracts and get a more fair deal.
Oh, you and I have talked about we're into, the whole predator stuff that goes on.
Yeah.
And so many of these authors that do think, I've been offered a contract. And you've got to understand, all our listeners, that contracts that are sent by anybody are always for the benefit of the person who sends it, first off. They're not for your real benefit. They're going to come in for them. And you do have to ask for it. I mean, one of the clauses that makes me cuckoo with a lot of these contracts where they say, well, you can terminate the contract, let's say, in 30 days or something like that. But they have a little clause in there, as long as it's mutually agreeable. And I'm thinking, mutually agreeable? What does mutually agreeable mean? If I want a divorce, I want out on that.
It is tough. And authors should realize if they've been able to master writing a book, with pacing and voice and character, they can understand the key provisions of a contract. Right. This is now your stock and trade. You're in the business of selling your manuscript, your words, your ideas.
Okay. Helen, hold that. Let's come back to that. We're going to take a quick break because this is really important for all of our listeners to understand. This is Judith Briles. It's AuthorU, your guide to book publishing, and my guest today is Helen Sedwick.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
Give your book the best shot at getting buzz before it's even released. JKS Communications has been leading the book publicity industry for more than a decade. From producing some of the earliest book trailers to recently creating what Shelf Awareness calls the world's longest book tour, our team of publicists work tirelessly, smart, and with the goal of getting you the best attention possible. Our family of publicists come from journalism and publishing backgrounds with great experience and a passion for books. And our family of authors all across the globe are supportive of one another. We read your book and talk to you to understand your goals and lifestyle before sending you a proposal. We only represent books and authors that we believe in. Let's get going. Go online at jkscommunications.com.
Is there a book in you or another? AuthorU will show you how to create, develop, and publish your book without being hoodwinked. If you already have a book out, You'll find a supportive and brainstorming community that's connected and creative no matter where you live. AuthorU brings in national experts for its book camps and annual author extravaganza held each May. It has regular meetings and delivers webinars for its members on timely topics. Through AuthorU's extensive network, members enjoy exclusive benefits, including significant discounts for a variety of services necessary to publishing. The Resource, its online book publishing news magazine, is content-heavy and it's free. If you want to create a book that has pizzazz, punch, and panache, AuthorU is for you. If you're a hobbyist or a casual author, it's not. Join AuthorU today through its website at AuthorU.org. Follow AuthorU on Twitter at AuthorU and on Facebook at AuthorU, where timely author and publishing tips and articles are posted daily. AuthorU, where the author goes to become seriously successful.
First impressions are everything in the world of book publishing. Whether your book is an ebook, a print version, or both, your book cover needs to pop, sizzle, and sparkle to immediately capture the attention of your audience. And your book's interior needs to be just as dynamic and reflect the professionalism your readers demand. Nick Sellinger of NZ Graphics has won numerous national and international book awards for his cover designs and interior layouts. With over 20 years of experience in graphic design, he knows what it takes to create award-winning books and the many promotional pieces that authors need, such as posters, banners, postcards, one-sheets, business cards, logos, and more. Visit ncgraphics.com and see what authors and publishers have to say about their award-winning books and how NZ Graphics can make your book the success it was meant to be. That's nzgraphics.com.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. If you want to write and publish a book, if you want to be successful as an author, your guide to book publishing, everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, is for you. Stay tuned and you'll hear about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
With me today is Helen Sedwick, and we are talking about the business of authoring and writing. And Helen is the author of the Self-Publisher's Legal Handbook. So she certainly knows what to go on as an attorney, and some of the things that we authors easily can get into deep doo-doo with. And that's the truth. And she had a great phrase that she mentioned before we took the break, which was theft by contract. And some of the things that authors get into because they're so excited that someone wants their book, or they think they want their book, and the real reality is that they may not be a traditional publisher. They just may be a paid to publish operation, and you really need to know the difference. So, Helen, why don't we get into that a little bit?
Sure. There are a lot of companies out there that pretend to be traditional publishers, but they are paid for services, paid for publishing companies. The big distinction is in a traditional publishing contract, the traditional publisher invests in the cost and the time for editorial, design, promotion, and distribution. A paid for service or a self-publishing service company, it's the author who pays for those various services that take the manuscript and turn it into a book. So anybody who pretends to be a traditional publisher, let's say they ask you to submit your work and they pretend to be selective, as soon as they ask you for a credit card, you know that you're dealing with a vanity publisher or a service company.
Exactly. And I mean, that's what my big thing is. If you're going to do this, if you're going that route, learn it and control it all yourself.
Yes, and
that's
there are,
my position.
With the Internet, there are many resources for being able to research the reputation of these various companies. Some of them are quite good, but they're straightforward. You should be able to calculate your costs and your revenues online. There are decent companies, but there are a lot of companies who realize that writers are dreamers, and they're trying to cash in on those dreams. So you need to be a little skeptical, a lot skeptical.
Yeah, you need to have a lot of skepticism. And I think the other thing is that all of our listeners need to understand is most people, when they're doing Google searches, because I have a whole thing about, you put in the name of a person or you put in the name of the company and you add complaint and scam and con and ripoff and, all kinds of things, lawsuits. But the reality is most people, and I'm talking most, like 90%, do not go past the first page of a Google search. They stop right there. It's not there on top. Well, these companies and service providers who I don't know if we want to use the word tricksters, but who have had problems of sorts, that they are masters at flooding information out that will push any negative and those complaints and things down further, so they never show up on page 1, page 2, page 3 of a search on their name. So you need to search. I mean, you go past page 1 when you're searching for people.
Absolutely, because there's a lot at stake here. It's worth the time to keep looking before you sign that contract. The bad ones, the really big bad ones, they're going to find those pretty quickly. But it's the little ones, and they pop up all the time that you have to be careful about. And sometimes some of these tiny publishers or self-publishing service companies are very well-meaning. They're just not very good at what they do. That's as much a waste of money as anything else.
Well, I think you want to be around with someone who has been doing this for a while. I think that's really important. That if they're brand new into the game, they're really green, and I'd rather have someone who is green work on somebody else's money and product and project before they get mine.
With the downsizing of traditional publishing, there are a lot of people who have gone freelance who have New York top-notch experience. They may be more expensive, but I think in the long run, they're better value.
Mm-hmm. Helen, I really am thankful that my experience really started with New York, that 18 of my own books were with New York publishers, and I really learned a lot, and my expectations of what a book should look like and feel like and present like really are along the traditional lines, and that the last thing I want to see is any book that I had my fingers on anyone would think was self-published. And that self-published books, and I'm talking about the vanity type of books, look different. They feel different. They read different. They're amateurish. And I'm sure you're aware, all of our listeners need to be aware that we have an Amazon slapdown going on that went into effect this month. And they announced it last month that if your books that are up on Amazon are not edited, if they are full of grammar issues and typos and formatting stuff, you're going to get a badge that suspends your saleability until it's fixed. And if it doesn't get fixed, it's going to get yanked off. Are you aware of that, Helen?
I am aware of that.
Yeah.
Yes, Amazon unfortunately has been hit with a lot of people demanding refunds, or they claim that Amazon's misleading their products. So they are using a system that's as mysterious as Amazon, going to be noting books that they feel are not up to a professional level.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I suggested, because I have it in my Blunder book, that if you are writing, especially in the fantasy and sci-fi arena, where you make up words and you have oddball spellings, is you use a type of a lexicon in the very front explaining that kind of thing, and what some of what your words are. So the Amazon robots, because it's robots who are out here. The Amazon robots don't toss you into the wind. So,
I think Amazon's going to regret this because of that. Because they're going to be flagging a lot of books wrongly, and whatever flack they're getting from buyers, they're going to now get from authors. And so they probably should have just remained like a neutral conduit and not tried to get into the editing or evaluation business.
Well,
but they didn't ask me my opinion.
I actually tell you, I'm for it in a lot of ways because I just see so much garbage now. And Amazon is one of the reasons why we have so much book pollution, because anybody and their uncle can throw anything up there. And it's tough. So I'd rather see a crackdown and get everyone up to the par that if you do have odd spellings and make up words and things like that, go ahead and let them know so you have it and you're covered. But Helen, I never thought that I would be throwing books away. I'm a book addict. I never thought I would be tossing books away that people present and show me. I mean, I had a workshop yesterday and a woman brought 3 books and I told her, your books are unreadable. They're unreadable.
Yeah.
And, those are the ones that need to be fixed. But that's because they can self-publish. And they go to, CreateSpace and all that, and they bang them out.
Yep.
So
there is that.
So you have that. All right. So let's just jump back to this. So we have any other issues that we want on dealing with the contract issues that authors should be really tuned into.
What they should think about is that their copyright in their work is like a bunch of different stores, and that you only want to rent out the stores or license the work to a store that can actually take advantage of selling your work. For instance, if you're working with an English-only publisher, you don't want to give them world rights to such things as your Mandarin translation or your French audiobook. So always think of it as if you own the whole shopping center and you're renting out little stores, and you don't want to give somebody a bigger store than they can actually handle. So I think it's empowering for authors to think of themselves as the landlord, and that they control who gets to sell little pieces of their work. You don't have to give the first person that comes along the keys to the entire building. That's a bad idea, unless it happens to be a very large publisher with the money to make your work a bestseller.
Well, I always loved John Grisham's attitude when it came to his movie rights. And he said, look, if they pay me so much money, I don't even care what they do with it anymore. He said, okay, all right. But if they're throwing so much money at you, that humongous landlord, so to speak, then you can let them run and play. But boy, today they are not doing throwing a lot of money at authors. It's really minuscule in a lot of ways.
No, unless you're a celebrity and you have kind of a tell-all.
Yes.
You're lucky to get $10,000, which is not even minimum wage for the amount of work it involves.
Exactly. And let's come back and talk about that a little bit. We're going to take another quick break. This is Judith Briles. Helen Sedwick is our guest today, and we're talking about legal things, contracts, and how to keep success.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
Want to publish like a pro today? Well, then take a look at Ingram Spark, the only publishing platform that offers print and ebook services through a single source. Upload, edit, and manage titles all in one place. Take more control of printing costs with print on demand, and reach even more readers through one of the world's most extensive distribution networks. Built by independent publishers for independent publishers, Ingram Spark has everything you need to maximize your book's potential: color printing, ebook distribution, print on demand, global reach, and more. Start publishing with Ingram Spark today and see just how far your titles will go tomorrow. That's ingramspark.com.
Many of us have dreamed of writing a book.
Some of us even have.
Then the hard work starts.
You'll need an editor.
Who will design the cover or typeset the pages?
Who will format the ebook?
If you're a business owner, consultant, or coach with a serious message and expertise to share, the team of experts at 1106 Design can guide you through the maze.
They've helped more than 1,000 authors create top-quality books and avoid the not-so-reputable self-publishing companies.
Learn more at 1106design.com.
Then call Michelle at 602-866-3226. 1106 Design.
When Ned Thompson and Harry Shore started Thompson Shore in 1972, they believed employees with great character would make up the best company. They were right. They hired people who were not only experts in bookmaking, but who were obsessed with quality and delivering exceptional customer service. Almost 40 years later, Thompson Shore remains a 100% employee-owned company. Ned and Harry knew that successful customer projects are a direct result of empowered employees. We specialize in all books for large and small publishers. Creating beautiful and well-made books, we're dedicated to pleasing our customers by making the experience a good one from start to finish. The personal touch we have with our customers allows us to be innovative in solving their most difficult challenges. Our platform also ensures that we can remain flexible to meet our customers' unique needs and expectations. Our marketing kit can create buzz for your title, enhancing the promotion of your book during infancy. When you need to test the market to gauge your future sales, we can provide digitally printed books that will transition seamlessly into a larger offset run. From ebook to hard copy to delivery, our skillful customer service teams are at the ready to answer your most pressing question. At Thompson Shore, we know that making the highest quality books requires more than just best technologies. It requires superior customer service, professionalism to the trade, and commitment to environmental and social values. With these standards of excellence in place, you can be sure that we will always help you put your best book forward.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. Coming up, you'll hear more about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
Well, I love the idea that authors should be thinking of themselves as landlords when they're working with their books, and that they have to manage what rights they give to people to manage on their behalf. And that's audio, it's digital, it's any of these rights, and certainly foreign rights have to be considered. Isn't that right, Helen?
Foreign rights, film rights, dramatizations, TV. Depending on the book, it could be merchandise, cute little stuffed animals if you've got those kind of characters. Books can generate a lot of income and a lot of ideas, sequels, prequels. But people may not realize that The Martian, the movie that's Matt Damon movie, that started off as a self-published book.
It did, absolutely. Yes. Andrew Weir, yep. And I've been trying to figure out how much money is put behind Matt Damon and getting him back from all these weird places he goes to in his movies. All right.
So it can happen. And so don't give away the shop, the entire building, to the first person that comes along, the first pretty face, as they say. Treat your work with more care and more respect than that.
Exactly. And you know, one of the great stories, I mentioned John Grisham earlier, but you know, he was self-published and he couldn't sell anything, and he finally sold his A Time to Kill for something like $5,000 to the publisher, and it saved their bacon that they later turned down, and he became, you know, famous and successful with his stuff, and they came back with the rights, and they ended up getting $2 million for that book.
Yeah.
But there's resales.
Writing takes persistence, not just in the writing and shopping your work around, but when it comes to the negotiating and looking for, getting the most potential out of your work, that takes persistence as well.
Well, one of the questions I have, because I've always go around with my authors when they're starting their businesses and what are they going to call it, the imprint. And one of my cautions is, well, you're not going to call it your name. I don't want you to call it your business. I want you to make it sound like it is a publishing house. So, what are your thoughts about adopting a business and an imprint name?
I recommend that writers do that. And you can have a business name even if you're a sole proprietorship. For instance, my books are published under my business name, which is 10 Gallon Press. That comes from my first book, which happens to be Set on the Prairie.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have anything to do with self-publishing, but 10 Gallon Press.
Mm-hmm.
So the way you adopt a name is first you do some research, and my toolkit with Joel, and in fact my book is Idea, how to do the research, because you want to make sure you're not using a name that's confusingly similar to an existing business, particularly one in publishing. Then in your local community, you file what's called a fictitious business name statement. And if you search that, you'll find services that do that, usually for under $100. And the reason why you wanted it, some people call it a doing business as filing. Once you've done that, then you can go down to the bank and open separate checking and credit card accounts in that business name. Again, still as a sole proprietorship. And if you have separate accounts, it's going to make your life so much easier at tax time. If you want to separate your personal business from your personal life from your business life, it's that half hour or hour that you spend at the bank setting up these separate accounts makes your life so much easier in the long run.
Well,
and helps you with the IRS. Anyway,
I was just going to add that on. Not only that, if you ever get pulled because you are a small business and you are more vulnerable in auditing and those kind of things, when you have it clear, concise, that this is the business, everything I do to support the business for your deductibility and everything else, it will make not only your life easier, but also will make it. If you do get audited or called in on anything, it will ease the process.
It's going to make an absolute difference. If you haven't separated your business income and expenses from your other income and expenses, you won't survive the audit. It's absolutely critical that you do that, even if you're losing money.
Well, it is, and look at a lot of small businesses lose money.
At the beginning,
especially in the beginning years, your startup years.
Yes, but that's okay. Our tax code permits startups to lose money in their early years. And just because we're not making widgets doesn't mean we're not a startup business. And writers can take advantage of those tax breaks for starting a business, provided it's a realistic. There's a real chance that they're actually going to turn a profit someday, and a real intent to turn a profit someday, which is the part of the reason why you set it up as a business and you run it as a business.
Exactly, from the get-go. So those of our listeners who are still running everything out of their personal checking account, stop it.
Well, once you know that you are going to be going into self-publishing or you're going to be going into freelancing, that's when you need to start change gears, and it's not just writing short stories and sending them off to journals in the hopes of getting $99 or something. Once you decided that you're making this a business, go through the steps of setting it up as a separate business, and it will save you time and money pretty quickly.
It will, and I also think it almost puts a kind of a lift to your own self that you do have these separate entities, and it adds a more serious tone, and it also lets other people know that you're not dabbling and playing, that you have an intention here.
It does, I think, give you a different mindset and gives you a more sense of purpose to both your business and then how people see it. I think it makes a big difference. That's one reason why I like people to name their business. It's a different mindset.
Exactly. So come up with something. I mean, my publishing house is Mile High Press. I live in Denver, Colorado. It's the Mile High City. And of course, now it's with all our laws with things, it has a whole new definition for Mile High. But but we nailed down Mile High Press, 16 years ago when we started our own imprint. When I broke away from publishing, under the auspices of New York and traditional. So come up with something. I mean, it could be a name that I don't want people to use their own names. I think it's a mistake. It screams out it's self-published, especially if you're going out for reviewers. Don't do it. Don't. It's a kiss of death for you. And I mean, I have one client that he adores his mother-in-law. He pulled her middle name and made that the press. It's perfect. It's perfect. I have another client, one of his favorite towns in Massachusetts. He loved that town. He named his press after it. So, you never know where it's going to go. But, I love your 10-gallon, your 10-gallon, Helen. Yes. That you just never know, but come up with something that makes it. And then one of my taglines that I always go with, as people will ask, who's publishing your book? And you can say, well, I'm published by blah, blah, blah. And I'm honored to be published by by an independent press who specializes in developing authors like myself. Done. No one's going to go in and find out it's you. You move on. So
absolutely.
So that's my 2 bits on that. All right. So Helen, what are some of these other steps that authors should be doing and writers should be doing that you see time after time, the boo-boos? What
if you're going to be your own publisher, then you should buy your own ISBNs.
Right.
If you buy your own ISBNs, then when you're self-publishing, you can take the same edition of your book and sell it through Amazon. That's using CreateSpace as your provider, and then you can also sell it through Ingram Spark or Lightning Source. You can also privately publish it, and all those books will have the same ISBN, so all their sales will be counted together. If you use an ISBN through CreateSpace or some other self-publishing company, then they basically really control your book. If you were to pull your book from them or you would want to print it someplace else, you'd have to use a separate ISBN. And my goal, my advice generally to authors is you really want to control. You're the publisher. You really want to control your cover, your content, your ISBNs, your pricing, your distribution. Don't abdicate this to somebody else. Spend a little extra time and money and maintain control of it.
And control is the right word. But they don't get that. They don't understand. I see this with the ISBN all the time. They think that, well, if they signed up with the paid publish service, whatever it was, and the ISBN is mine, they think it's theirs. And I said, no, it's owned by that service on that. Right. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with a final segment with Helen Sedwick. Lots more to come on Doing Business Smart.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
The book shepherding concept is simple. The publishing world is changing, and so must you. You need an experienced shepherd and a guide to partner with you as you create, strategize, develop, publish, and achieve your publishing goals. You can't do it alone without paying the price. You can spend your money creating a book that turns out to be so-so, or you can create a book that looks and feels classy, builds your brand, and is a financial success, a bestseller. It's your choice. You choose. You need the book shepherd. Publishing is riddled with obstacles, sometimes nightmares for the author. You don't need problems. You want solutions. Dr. Judith Briles will shepherd you through the maze and the chaos. At times, she's had to step in and rescue a book that has been sabotaged by a publisher or by a publishing service provider or sometimes even the author themselves. Judith Briles is the book shepherd if you want to create a book with no regrets. Give her a call today. 303-885-2207. That's 303-885-2207. Or email her at judith@briles.com. By the way, Briles is spelled B-R-I-L-E-S. Follow Judith on Twitter at My Book Shepherd and on Facebook at The Book Shepherd.
One of the most important decisions you will ever make is your choice for printing your book. You are choosing a company which will be responsible for guiding you through the process and printing your book at a level of quality and detail that embraces your personal and creative needs. You want to choose a company that when your book finally arrives, you are delighted and ready to move on to the next level, and one that is customer focused. Choose King Printing Company and Addy Books to be that company that brings you to the next level. Go to kingprinting.com or call 978-458-2345 and ask for Tom Campbell.
At Total Printing Systems, customer service is our priority. We are located in Southern Illinois. Our employees have an average of 18 years experience and know that customer relationships are important to our continued success. We have been a short-run book printer for nearly 40 years and always stay at the forefront of technology. Our niche is from 1 to 5,000 copies. Today, we offer digital, black and white, and 4-color high-speed inkjet printing, a cost-effective way to introduce color into your short-run titles. We, of course, offer traditional offset printing as well. Bindery is done in-house, from adhesive case binding to PUR perfect binding to mechanical binding of all types, including side sewing. We provide warehousing, kitting, distribution, inventory management, a new print-on-demand facility, streaming browser-based ebooks, and bookstore. Call us at 1-800-465-5200 for a quote on your next book project. You can also visit our website at www.tps1.com.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. If you want to write and publish a book, if you want to be successful as an author, your guide to book publishing, everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, is for you. Stay tuned and you'll hear about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
All right. Well, in our final segment, I told Helen I wanted to cover a couple of things that I see that comes off quite often with authors in writing, and one of those is when can they use real names and when should they just run to the exit door and stay away from it. So controversy is always interesting. It helps sell books, and what authors worry about, Helen, is what could trigger a lawsuit. And of course, in America, anyone can sue.
Yes, but let's talk about using real people in writing, because I think 90% of books use real people either by naming them or just as models for characters. So, where is that line where it goes from being acceptable to problematic? Mm-hmm. And here I'm talking about legal standards, not awkwardness at family gatherings. That one I can't help people with. So, if you're talking, let's say you're writing a memoir, and you're talking about people you know by name, if the information is positive, factual, even a little bit embarrassing, even reflecting your opinion, like you think someone's nagging or overbearing, all that's acceptable legally. On the legal side, where you cross the line is if the information is really negative about a person, potentially going to affect their acceptance in the community is one of the things the law looks at, their ability to make a living, and that person's still alive, then the more potentially damaging that information is, the more writers need to think, is it true? I mean, here I'm talking about information, say allegations of abuse or theft. Is it true and verifiable? Can I verify that information if I have to? And authors shouldn't rely entirely upon their own memory. Memory evolves over time, so they should always look for some collaboration or something to support their memories or their view of the facts. And even if that information is true, is it very private? Like, only a handful of people know about this incident? Because sometimes writers get in trouble if they're disclosing truly private information that is damaging or mortifying to a person. That will get the courts get some kind of moralistic about it, especially if they feel that you're disclosing information that you didn't really need to disclose. The courts are more liberal if, for instance, the writer has been the victim of abuse, and she's exploring that in a memoir and perhaps revealing these very private events, because the courts are not going to protect the perpetrator from those disclosures. They do think if it's in the public interest and if it's part of a person's own story, they give that writer a lot of leeway. Now, so authors need to really think about how damaging the information is. What are their motives for releasing the information? Is it because it's part of the story or because they're trying to get at somebody? It might be better, as a writer, part of your duty is to reach for greater truths. And if you think your book might reach a greater truth and be a better book by changing a name, then change the name. You can change the name in memoir as well. That's kind of like a big bundle of law in about 4 minutes, but so we probably have some questions about that.
Yeah, let me ask you about fiction, because that I know that one book that I'm working with right now, that she's taking some juicy stuff from her real life experiences, and then she's transposed it into her fictionalized account with name changes and all these other kind of things. That at what point does an author get into trouble when you've transformed names, places, but the elements of whatever the scenario was are best to their memory? I'm going to go back to your memory statement.
The legal standard is if you disclose damaging personal information or make false statements about an identifiable living person, that may lead to a claim. So in fiction, it's easier to make the person not identifiable. And we're not talking about someone recognizing themselves. The claim arises if other people, third parties, recognize you're a bad guy. So a fiction writer, and fiction writers are rarely sued for defamation, a fiction writer has a lot of leeway to make a person not recognizable to others. In a memoir, you can do the same by changing names and physical characteristics. In practicality, I think the risk of getting sued is a combination of money and emotion. If there's a lot of money involved, someone might sue you, or if they have a lot of money. And if there's a lot of emotion involved, somebody might sue you. But if they have both money and a lot of emotions, that's the riskiest situation. So the more somebody has money that you're going after, the more you should probably consult with an attorney before you release the book. And I also think writers should separate the writing process from the publishing process. It could be the writing process is very valuable for the writer on a personal level, and then they really need to think about these issues before they publish it. But go through the writing of the book first. You may find a lot of these questions resolve themselves. Judith, you must be coughing, I suspect. So,
one other area that I wanted to tap into before we leave, and you're right, I was coughing.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh my God, this crud was that dealing with the whole area of when we hire, the freelancers to assist us in doing separate things. What are some of the things that we should be looking for when we contract services with an editor? And so let's say you got a writing sample, they did a sample, you liked what they did, but God, when you got the whole book back, you didn't like it. So what do you do? How do you cover yourself here?
Well, most editors will, some editors will give you a partial refund, or they'll at least give you, if you're not happy with their work and you're able to articulate the reasons why, a professional editor is going to give it another try. But most of the time, you're not going to get your money back because what they're selling you is their time and their expertise, and they're not guaranteeing a result. That's the practical reason. Someone might guarantee you a result if they're really starting out or they're really confident. But in hiring freelancers, I encourage people to get the deal in writing because the mere process of writing it out and talking about it often avoids problems later. If you're dealing with designers, then it's important to get an exclusive right to the product of their design. So they can't use your same book cover or the key elements of your book cover with anybody else. So that's, in a lot of the designers tend to give money-back guarantees, but one way or another, you want to own the final product that you pay for. If you either own it or you have the exclusive right to use the unique elements of it. You don't want someone else, you don't want that designer to go out and use your illustrations for somebody else's book, illustrations that you paid for. That would be very unpleasant.
Well, I have a question on that. So let's say a designer created a book and you've decided, okay, I'm going to do some more of these. I've got more coming along. I don't think I want to go back and pay for that cover design. Why don't I just take those elements and redesign my own work and do it, do these other things? Have we crossed over a line?
It depends upon your agreement with your designer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you need to read it and talk it through pretty carefully, because a lot of designers will say, you may use these illustrations with this one book, but you can't use these illustrations in another book or as a basis of a cartoon or a movie. That these things should not be left unsaid. They need to be talked about before authors make a mistake without. Mm-hmm. That could be costly, and they make it innocently.
Yep. And I will tell you that with my fifth book, what we call the Sheepy Guys, they come back again. They come back with new poses, new cover design, and I go back to the original guy who did it, and he redoes it, and then I have free movement to do variations of the thing. But we keep coming back. We pay for it on it, but it's because we like them. All right.
It's yet another contract.
It's another contract. So, Helen, how do people get your toolkit?
My toolkit, which gives you a lot of times, I was talking a lot of nuts and bolts, laid out with information and links and forms. It's on AuthorToolkits.com. So AuthorToolkitsPlural.com. You could also visit me at my website, HelenSedwick.com. My blog has a lot of this material. Not in as much detail, but could certainly get a lot of people started.
Thank you so much. And Helen's name is spelled S-E-D, as in David, W-I-C-K. This is Judith Briles. Thank you, Helen, for being with us today. It's Author U. We'll be with you next week. Keep on writing and publishing smart.
Thank you for being a part of Your Guide to Book Publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. Each week, a variety